You're right there, thank you. Yes, Leo. You are? You already have your tickets?
Yeah.
Cool.
I got tickets for Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, what a way to start great. Start.
I'm so excited. Final day of school, good school.
Not cool.
Finals?
Um, so I want to ask, and start off today with what are your sources of glory? Now, maybe you don't want to think of it in terms of glory. What brings you honor? What are you proud of in terms of either personal accomplishments, or if you want to answer it more broadly in terms of our society, what do we honor? Where is the glory? What are the accomplishments that people celebrate? That kind of a general question, either personal or general. Maxwell. Okay? So let's get a list going. So great. Achieving certain things academically, yes.
Sports.
Sports.
Sports and sort of status and
Now, is that something different from sports? Oh, okay, okay. So status, I want to specifically say regarding business, you're the president of the company, CEO, that kind of stuff, yeah.
In general speaking, you could say like defying stereotypes.
Yeah.
That could be an achievement of some sort.
Defying stereotypes is a source of accomplishment, maybe achievement, glory, yeah.
Playing an instrument for like multiple years.
Okay.
I think it's pretty cool.
And something musical is a source of glory and honor, yeah. Trust and personality. Trust and personality. So maybe you are able to have trust, and people trust you, and that sort of thing. Okay, all right. Eric?
Leading or creating something.
Leading, creating. These are sources of achievement, accomplishment, glory, yeah. Having lots of friends. What else? Haven't heard much over in this direction. Yeah, Emily. Helping. Or we'll say helping in charity. Can drives and stuff like that. Yeah.
Winning a match of Care Common.
Absolutely.
Not like you ever win.
What is that?
Absolutely.
Hey. Okay. We got a
Winning.
challenge right here. Eric tries to challenge me that I can't beat him in Care Common.
Alright, sure.
We'll find out later this week. Yeah, Emerson.
Having a job.
Having a job.
Wednesday.
Hey, I accomplished that.
Winning something.
Winning something, doesn't have to be Kirk Thomas. Just winning. Yes.
Are you fighting an addiction? Like
What's that?
being able to stop an addiction or something?
Oh, wow. Stopping
Deep.
an addiction, being able to get control of something that may previously had control of you and getting past that. Yeah. Getting an education. Education. Now, this is interesting, yes. Just proud of life in general. All right.
If you have a great outfit, you should be proud of that.
I'm really
Oh,
interested
sales.
No, like
that
good taste.
there's something, whether it's general or specific to you, that did not get mentioned at all.
Cell phones.
And for
Yeah.
many, if not most, if not all cultures, throughout certainly most of time, would have had this on the list, and it would have been either at or incredibly close to the top.
Oh, it's an Instagram follower or something.
Military.
I was about to say some.
Oh, I thought this was for us personally.
Well, we said general or
Oh,
personal, so we have both that.
General.
No, Leo did not say that.
I said like
Yeah.
status in the organization.
You said status in the organization.
In relation
Um,
to military.
Boy, how far we have come, and I don't think there's any way for anybody in this room to fully appreciate this, including me. Ways to achieve. Everybody wants to achieve something. Everybody wants to be known for something and recognized and in a proper way. But the number of ways that you have open to you, literally, they're endless. We talked about this back in first year when we talked about Roman education. You look at all the majors you have to choose from at a college. And the only higher end that you really pursued, if you were Roman, was public speaking. It wasn't like you had, you know, biochemistry and information technology and design studies and 18th century literature and physical therapy. I mean, you look at a college catalog, it's endless. We've got so many ways to achieve. All right, let me ask you this. Could you name any or all of the varsity men's basketball players at North Central? What about any or all of the varsity women's basketball players?
Yeah.
Any or all of the varsity football players?
Oh gosh, no.
Any or all, certainly not all, right? Any or all of varsity volleyball?
Tennis.
Any or all of, certainly not all, but counterpoints?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So, my father-in-law, who's passed away now, but huge basketball fan, lived more southern Indiana, but huge college fan and would, read all the magazines, who are the hot high school recruits and what colleges they go into and stuff like this. And North Central's had plenty of great athletes come through here, but periodically he'd ask me, well, do you know so-and-so? I'd be like, no, I know the name, but I don't know the individual. Well, so-and-so plays such and such, at North Central. I was like, what you don't understand is that North Central is a school of between 3,000 and 4,000 students, and our performing arts are equally as good as our sports, are equally as good as what's going on in graphic arts, equally as good as what's going on academically, and suddenly no one thing maybe really dominates the school culture. And if you have a small, especially like a rural school, then maybe there might be one activity. And it dominates, and everybody knows everybody who's involved in it. Not you guys. You've got so many opportunities and things.
I still feel like sports dominates everything.
Yo, I can do the whole. I can listen to
Like
all the
coming from like a
varsity
student
Yeah,
standpoint,
me
it's
too.
way
You think so?
different. Yeah,
I can't listen to
There's
it.
I don't know.
There's like nothing when it
It's
comes
like
to
athletics are.
Yeah. I will accept that, but I've got to push on and ask you a little bit because you
Yeah.
really lit up. Are you seriously telling me though that especially our choirs?
How many people go to a choir? How many
A
people
lot
go
of
to
Okay,
a
well,
The only
Yeah.
one people
But
go
you're
to
not-
is Messiah concert. That's it.
Okay, so you're judging like going to a concert versus going to a game
Like, think
in the
about-
audience size. Okay,
Think about
that's
like-
true.
Well, like
Like
what's on
one
the news,
football
like the
game.
school news. I don't know, I've never
They
heard
don't
them
talk
announce
about,
a
like,
choir concert
concerts.
on the news.
They really don't announce the performers.
They'd be like,
People
But
still
also
go to
like
them.
art
It's
things.
like
Okay,
It's like
okay,
dance and film,
okay.
so it's not like.
I think, and maybe that is
Oh,
true,
yeah,
maybe,
you
maybe
got-
students, your perception, certainly teachers, we're very aware of the excellence in all these areas, but maybe that doesn't seem that way from your perspective, yeah.
Like maybe performing arts doesn't have as much publicity as athletics does, but on like the whole, I feel like performing arts, the choirs and orchestra groups do much better at what they're doing than the athletics.
You certainly go down the hallway and look at those huge ISMA plaques that line the hallways and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
I mean, I think the idea of like which ones are known more is better known by people who are in those areas. Like I know a lot more people that are in like band and orchestra and choir because I'm in band.
Sure, some of it depends on
While
the
people who are in
supervision.
athletics probably know more
That's
about
probably
them.
true, yeah.
Personally, I would say I I value the music stuff more, and like if you tell me you were a varsity football player, I'd be like, okay.
Well, so it's your own interest.
You
Okay, well,
were to tell me
football
count
seems
your
really
power
fun.
counterpoints, I would be like, oh, that's really impressive.
You were a
Yeah.
So I personally, and I can't speak for anyone other than myself, but I personally think that I lean more towards the arts and music.
And some of that too, again, not like what you're involved in, like Derek said, but also maybe just personal interest and yeah, what you're drawn to.
Freshman year, I played basketball on the freshman team in the roster for JV, and I was also in choir. And when I told people I had a basketball game, they'd be like, "Oh, I'll be at that." Like, but then if I told someone, "Hey, I've got like a choir thing tonight," they'd be like, "Oh, good luck."
I won't be there, but you know, good luck to you, right? Okay. Well, still, you've got all these ways. If it's possible, try to imagine such a world. That is about it for achieving glory, honor, and recognition.
What about the philosophy?
Is valor on the field of battle. Well, what about the philosophers? So Cicero says, he's going to contrast some stuff a little bit. He says, illud autem optimum est. He says that is an optimum thing, not just good, but optimal, best, great. He says it's a really great thing that I audio, that I hear. And against quod, against which in Wadi, attack is made by improbis and ividis people. Improbis is almost a synonym, but a little bit stronger for malis. By bad and invidis people, wicked people. He says there's this very good saying, and he's going to quote it here. He says it's a really good saying, but it's a saying that often gets attacked by wicked and bad people. And his statement is, Caedant arma togae, concedat laurea laudi. Now before we unpack what you so beautifully translated from the side note, let's just talk about Caedant and concedat for a moment. If I remind you that both those words are third conjugation verbs, they would both be what tense and mood. Caedant and concedat, yes, present subjunctives. That's why you have the let translations. Let arms yield to the toga. Let the laurel wreath yield to glory or civilian praise. What's going on here? Well, obviously, arma would be a symbol of what?
Military.
The military. You did not wear a toga on the field of battle. The toga is what you wore where? In the Senate, in the forum, in the city, when you want to look good, but especially as a public official. And the statement is, let weapons yield to the toga. In other words, let the kind of glory you get from the military, let that actually take a backseat. Let that take a second place to the kind of glory that a citizen would earn wearing a toga. Let the laurea, the kind of wreath that maybe Caesar would give you, the laurel wreath for, again, valor in battle, let that take second place to civilian glory. Ut enim alios omittam nobis rem publicam gubernantibus nonne togae arma cesserunt. For he says, I omittam, I omit everything else. But for those who are gubernantibus the rem publicam, it is a funny word. For those who are gubernantibus, governing the rem publicam, the state, haven't arma cesserunt togae. No, it's almost the same as the line above.
Then not, how do weapons not yield?
Haven't weapons yielded to the toga? Now he's going to give an example from his own consulship, and then we're going to have to unpack that and talk about what it means today. He says, there was not periculum,
Trouble.
danger in the Republica,
In the Republic.
that was ever any gravius,
There is greater.
nor was there any greater otium, nor was there any greater peace. He's talking about his own consulship. Okay? He says, and thus it was with conciliis and with diligentia, diligence, that arma,
What?
that weapons, celeriter, quickly caecaderant, yielded or fell from the manibus of audacissimorum civium, of the most desperate citizens. Quousque tandem abutera Carolina patientia nostra, furor iste tuus nos eludet. Quenam finem sese effrenata iactabit audacia. Key word, audacia, audacissimorum. And now you can't stop, I know, it's just like a runaway train. He's talking about his own consulship. And he says, I managed to disarm even the most reckless citizens, those who were involved in the conspiracy of Catalina. I didn't attack them. I didn't arm everybody. We didn't go out killing people in the streets. His argument's going to be, I disarmed them through what? His words, through speeches, through the acts of a citizen, not through the actions of a soldier. Now, you've got to understand to whom he's writing this. He's writing this to his son, and this is an essay called De Officiis. It's one of the philosophical essays, and he wrote it specifically for his son, Marcus. Cicero had two children. We touched on this before. He had a son named just after him, son Marcus, and a daughter, Tullia. We know what happened to her. Died in childbirth, right. Marcus always seems to be a source of worry, if not downright embarrassment, for statesman Cicero. He's always writing letters to his son saying, study harder, work harder, what are you doing, this kind of stuff. And he ends up writing this whole essay, De Officiis, for his son, and unsurprisingly, it is titled On It's one thing for your parents to give you grief. It's another for your statesman parent to write an entire book on responsibilities and give it to you because he obviously thinks you're not holding up your end.
And that we can read it 2,000 years later.
And it's still going to be read 2,000 years later. Exactly right. So,
Oh,
oh, absolutely. I mean,
so embarrassing.
to know what this kid
Especially that
actually thought
Embarrassing.
would have been one. Yeah, exactly.
Understand?
Exactly. You don't
It's just
understand.
not a
You
phase.
don't understand, kids.
Wow. You know, Dad, there are these cool leather sandals that I really want, okay? This is so
It's not
good.
fake.
We walk barefoot in my day, son. You and your
You're gonna step on
hoity-toity leather sandals. Yeah. All right.
New fashion.
And of course, he's using his own life as an example. Now, I don't know if that works for you or not. I'd be surprised if you have not encountered that somewhere along the line where a parent has said something, well, I did this.
Well,
Well, when I got good grades when I was in school. Well, I studied. I never would have gotten a C on a test. Those, well, right, that's your response. Is right.
This is 20, 30 years later. Like,
And you're going, and you're thinking all those things, and hopefully, I will just say it, hopefully if you're wise, you don't vocalize this.
no.
Yeah, exactly,
Well,
that's,
After a while.
At least after, wait till your parent leaves the room.
Keyword is your wife.
If you're wise, don't vocalize them to your parents' face.
Infant.
But he's like, you know, when I was consul, right? And of course, Marcus, all right, I managed to disarm this whole conspiracy, and really, it was my word. And then he says, we're going to skip a little bit to line 9. But he says, licet mihi. It is licet for me. Licet's where we get our word license. It is allowed for me, and he addresses him, my son Marcus. It's allowed for me to gloriare.
Rejoice.
Well, it's a little more than rejoice.
Praise.
To glorify myself, to brag. Gloriare is to brag. He says, it's permitted, son Marcus. It's permitted for me to brag, apute, which is synonym for kumte.
With you.
With you. I mean, your family, you're my son. I can brag to you a little bit. Yeah. You ad quem, to which or to whom the hereditas, what does it look like? The inheritance of my gloriae, of my glory, and the imitatio, an imitation of my factorum. Facio facere feci factus ultimately, of my deeds.
Oh my.
You to whom the inheritance of my glory and the imitation of my deeds pertains. In other words, I'm expecting what? You're going to carry on the family name, boy. Right? You're going to carry on the family name. Now my glory is going to pass to you. So to a certain extent, you get a little leg up in life. Because you're going to carry on the name of your great father, me. Right? But I'm also expecting an imitatio factorum, an imitation of my deed. Now, that may sound a little grotesque to you, and really probably to me too. The one thing I want to say, though, I think he gets right. How can you expect a kid to do something if you're not going to tell the kid how to do it?
They learn.
Okay?
Learn the hard way.
Well, now, there's nothing wrong about necessarily learning the hard way, but you can't expect a kid to do something that, A, they don't even know to do. I didn't know you wanted me to do this. And then you can't expect them to be successful at it if they don't know how to do it. So I will say, I see it from time to time, a parent who gets angry with a child and kind of snaps and says, well, why didn't you blah, blah, blah? And I'm thinking, did the kid know? Did the kid know how? Now, maybe the kid did and was just being an idiot. But if you want something out of, and this I think goes to employees, people on your team if you're a coach, and your children. If you want something out of them, you got to show them what it is. You got to teach them. So Cicero at least is doing that. He's setting the bar pretty high for Marcus, which is probably unattainable. But he's at least going on to say, this is how I did it. And I got glory, which is actually going to pass on to you. And it didn't happen through the military. I got it through my work as a servant of Rome. And here's how I did it. Yeah.
Well, what's your definition on like teaching? Because the way
Good
you
question.
explained it was that you have to tell the child or the person how to do it in order for them to learn. But I thought that people learn by hearing the lecturing and guidance and like on a team, they tell you what to do and how
Yeah.
to do it. But through experience and guidance, you don't really need that.
I think the answer is yes to all that. I mean, isn't it all kinds of teaching? You need it all. There are some things you need direct teaching on, right? Nobody's just going to walk out there to the golf course with Coach Hodes, and you're just going to look at all these clubs and his equipment and figure out how to use it. You need to be taught, because that's a fairly complicated sport. You need to be taught how to do that. Other things, yeah, maybe it's by experience.
Yeah, but you need to learn, if we're not, think about it, you need to learn everything from experience, and yet you have words to help you along, like teaching words.
Yeah.
But you don't need the majority of the words, you need to learn them.
Again, I think it would probably depend on the thing it is.
I think
Nuclear physics,
yeah,
you're gonna learn nuclear physics better through experience.
no, yeah,
Like,
well,
I go to a nuclear reactor. That's all I know. Trial and error. You mean like exploding things?
I used to.
Hmm. Okay.
I used to test subjects.
Okay.
True.
Okay. So, moving on. He says, mihi quidem certe vir abundans bellicis laudibus nius Pompeius. It refers to a guy in line 11. Who is this? It was one of you, actually, in the trial. Who was Pompey? That was, alright, so he's talking about Mr. Logan back there. He says, nius Pompey, a vir abundans. Okay, abundance is the noun. What's the adjective form of abundance?
Abundant.
Abundant. A man abundant in bellicis laudibus. War honors. He says, let me give you an example, son. He says, here's this guy, Gnaeus Pompeius. He's a man who's got lots of war honors. And with multis implied hominibus audientibus. With many people listening, he said that he would have deportaturum fuisse frustra triumphum tertium. He would have gained his tertium triumphum, his third triumph, frustra. And frustra is what is the term for when you do something and there's no success whatsoever.
Failure.
In what's that?
Frustration.
In frustration or in vain. What does it mean? What does it mean if you do something in vain?
Selfish.
No. That's what it means to be vain. If you do something in vain, what's that mean? Yeah.
It's like you do it to get at the other person.
Not quite, Leah.
It's like you do it for no reason.
No reason. It's utterly pointless.
You do,
It's utterly pointless, yeah.
you do it for a reason, but there's no like outcome.
There's no good outcome. Well, for example, here you come up with a little Dixie cup full of water and the whole building's on fire. And you're tossing a little Dixie cup and like, I tried, but my effort was in vain. It was pointless.
Or like if you say like the Lord's name in vain.
That's
Like you're calling on
right. Well, and that's why then back to what you were saying, if someone is vain, it's about pointless self-adulation and self-praise and that kind of stuff. He says, a guy like Gnaeus Pompey, abundant in military honors, he said this with many people listening, that he would have gained his triumphum tertium, third triumph in vain, nisi, unless meo in rem publicam beneficio ubi triumpharet esse habiturus. He says, unless he had ubi, unless he had a place where he might triumpharet, might triumph, because of meo beneficio, close, because of my, well, I'll take that, because of my benefit to the rem publicam, to the republic. All right, that makes no sense at all. So what's a triumph? Back that up for me. What is, it's not just a victory. We'll talk about our triumph over something, but that's in a Roman sense, what was a triumphus? Yes?
I think, especially in the military, since there's a big battle and victory.
That's the only thing it was. Triumphus. For the Romans, this meant only one thing. This is a military parade after a military victory. So Caesar, after his time in Gaul, he led a triumph through the streets of Rome. A triumph is a military parade. Now we've taken it on to mean other stuff, but in ancient Rome, triumph is a military parade. You can't just lead one of these on your own as a general. The Senate has to vote you the privilege. And then What do you lead? Well, you lead your soldiers, so all the citizens can shower honor on their soldiers. Then you lead all the people that you've captured in battle. So Vercingetorix was led through the streets of Rome as a prisoner. And any animals or wagons full of loot or good stuff that you've captured, so everybody can see where you've been and what you did and how you're honoring Rome. That's a triumph. Now Pompey, we're going to get you this section next.
Okay.
Pompey celebrated an incredible 3 of these things. Caesar actually celebrated 4. But this is pretty rare. This is like your, 3-peat or 4-peat on a national championship. Again, pretty rare. And he says, Pompey said, and he's telling his son, he says, there are a lot of people hearing this, so I'm not making this up, son. A lot of people heard him say this. Pompey, a military guy, said that he would have had his 3rd triumph in vain. In other words, it would have been completely pointless if there hadn't been a Rome in which to have it. And the reason he had a Rome in which to have his military parade, he says, is because of me. Because I saved Rome from the whole Catiline thing. So you see where he's going this with his son. He says, you tell me which is greater, the toga or arma? A lot of people think arma because that's more flashy, it's more out there, it's exciting, you conquered lands, all that kind of stuff. He says, in actual fact, he says, it's the work of the citizen. It's the work of the statesman, it's the work of the servant, the public official. It really is greater. Because even Pompey himself said, my triumph would have been useless if you, Cicero, hadn't given me a place to hold it. Janae had her hand up first, and the other guys.
I kind of like walked in on the middle of the lesson. What is
Deo Filiis means on responsibility.
Oh.
It's a philosophical work that Cicero wrote for his son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was his son considering joining the military? Cicero trying to talk him out?
Not so much trying to talk him out of it. Everybody did a turn in the military, including Cicero. That was just part of it. Just like even today the royal family in England, everybody does a turn in the military. But he's trying to get his son to understand that's not where the biggest glory of life comes. It's through public service, it's through the things that the citizen does, not through the soldier. Yeah.
So would the triumvirate have been like a group of victors then?
Well, yeah, don't confuse the word. Triumph. I see where you're saying that. Ooh. That's actually a separate word.
Oh, okay.
Trium here is from 3, and in Virius it was a 3-man coalition. Now, in fact, although not when they were formed, Caesar would go on to get a triumph. He hadn't had one at that point. Pompey already had, and Crassus already had. So two of the guys have already had triumphs. Caesar had not yet. Yes, Eric.
Isn't Cicero using like a fallacy at this point?
What? Fallacy? What kind of language are you talking
Well,
about?
I mean, like a fallacy is like when it's like not quite like accurate to evidence, because he's using just what Pompey said as evidence, because Pompey said that that would have been in vain. That means it must be true.
What class are you taking? You taught fallacy.
That was from last year in English class.
Oh, in English class you did that. Okay, I was gonna say critical thinking does that, and TOK does that. All right. So, the Latin word is, of course, phalax. Too many L's. Let's try it again.
3
Yes, no 3 L's.
La 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 la.
Phalax is where we get our word fallacy, and fallacious, something that is false. Actually, it's where we get our word false. Right? So something that is a fallacy is false, but not just in the sense that I say Leo is wearing orange today. Well, that's just a straight up lie. And it's false. That's not a fallacy. Fallacy is a flaw in the statement. It's a flaw in the structure of how you say it. Okay?
Oh.
So, for example,
Bad example. Pinocchio saying my nose will grow. Actually, that's paradox.
yeah, it's paradox. So, for example,
when he lies.
No, he just turned out one that's also. This paragraph. Yeah, there you go.
now that is a perfectly logical statement. Completely false, of course, but it's completely logical in terms of the structure of the way we made it.
Yeah, the transitive property.
That is a perfectly valid
A
argument.
equals C and B equals C,
Okay.
A equals C.
Now, it's false, but it's not a fallacy. Right? We've not said something that was fallacious. Now you're saying it's fallacious, and there's a lot of different kinds of fallacies, and I know what you're talking about. You're saying it's a fallacy for him to appeal to one example like Pompey. Maybe. So, all right, who's Calvert Cheney? Calvert Cheney. He is not at all.
Is
he alive?
What's that? Yes, he's alive.
Is he a man?
He is a man.
Okay.
Okay, let's start off first. He's a man.
Is his last name Cheney?
His last name is Cheney. He is to this day, he is the highest scorer in the Big Ten for basketball.
Is there someone in
He was a basketball player at IU in the
Are you serious?
late 80s. He's gone on to coach. For a while, he was on the staff of IU basketball just a couple of years ago, actually. Best shooter in the Big Ten. Still holds the record. Heard him talking at a camp for teens and younger people. And he was telling them what wins a game is defense. And I was pointing it out to our son. I said, this is a guy who is the greatest shooter in the Big Ten. And the greatest shooter is telling you that what wins the game is defense. It's not a hot shot, trick shots, it's defense. Defense is what wins the game. And I said that obviously gives a lot more weight to that statement because here's a guy who is known for his offense. And yet the offensive guy is saying defense is the big deal. I was using the same kind of logic that Cicero was using. Now, is it fallacious? What you got to watch out for, the thing you probably picked up in your English class, and you especially see this in advertisements, just because somebody famous says something doesn't make it so. That's what you get in advertisements. All right, so the person who's a star advertises for Chevrolet. So what? Right? What does it matter that this movie star advertised for Chevrolet? That doesn't mean that Chevrolet makes a better car than Ford. There's no particular reason to buy that product. Now, given the fact Calvert Cheney is a pretty good player, knows what he's talking about, but yet didn't pick his own skill, he picked a different set of skills for what he thought was most important in basketball. To me, that seems a little more relevant than, Leonardo DiCaprio advertising for Milky Ways. I actually might have to go back to some teacher manual. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do at this moment.
It's on
There is Sheena, who, when she participates, always politely raises her hand and always answers a grammatical question. But one time she shouts out in 3 years, I make a reference about Leo.
Yeah, we haven't caught a video.
Well, okay, the future missus right sitting over there. Okay. Yes, you. Dawson. Dawson. I don't know, is it? necessarily, I mean, it could be all true. Advertising literally is odd plus where to. It's literally to turn someone's attention toward.
No, but usually, not always, but usually, if someone said, buy the thing because I really want you to buy it and I need it sales, like, that's true. But also, it just can be, buying this makeup, it highlights your eye, that could be a truth, but it's kind of.
Oh, well, I mean, certainly you could do that, yeah. Well, I don't see why it's so unpolite. It says it highlights your eyes, and in fact, it does highlight your eyes. Yeah, I'm sorry, Derek. Yeah, Leo.
Well, I can do that in almost any sport, you need a good defense, cause like even in like soccer and stuff, people
Sure.
like Ronaldo and Messi, you use most of the like defense and goalies for like trash. No matter
Okay.
how many goals they can score, like that one team could outscore them and beat the defense.
So what Leo said there was not quite where I thought he was going with that, but I like this. He said in any game, you've got to have defense, and the offense requires the defense. So let me ask you this. Does the military require a strong civilian government?
Yeah, it's the same.
You need some people to support it.
That's so.
Now, certainly there are places, well, now think about this, though. There are places where the military, even today, where the military, that's it. The military is the government. The military is running the show.
More like Sparta.
You know, we're kind of a Sparta-like kind of scenario. How important is the civilian to the military? Yeah.
I would say that in those instances, the military is kind of forced to, they either are in charge of a civilian that has to obey their every word,
Okay.
or they form a bit of a civilian, because there has to be, in order for the army to be maintained and get ammunition and food and
All
money,
right.
you need to have the base economics which requires
You
a
do.
civilian government.
Last little piece, and I want to tie this back into your stuff. Last sentence, he says to his son, he says, there are domesticae fortitudines. Domestic strength, yes, civic courage, that is non inferiores to militaribus, to military. And this goes back to what Patrick was saying about playing basketball and being in choir. Are there some glories that are lesser or inferior to others? Not in truth, but in practical perception. This is just the way the culture is. Are there some glories that seem to be inferior
Yeah.
to other glories? Janae?
Winning the lottery, getting a B on a test.
Okay.
I mean, like,
Which one is the greater glory?
winning the lottery. duh.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
then you can
it's
buy
all about that money.
Emily?
I'm curious, like the way our school system is set up,
Yeah.
there's more focus on academic, like math and science. And I mean, we have the arts, but it's like you're expected to do well in math and science, but then if you're not really so great with the arts, people are just like, oh, it's okay, whatever. But if you're not good at math and science, it's less worthy because you got a lower grade.
Let's just stay on that one for a little bit longer, shall we? Now, those of you who are in any of the arts, and I'm talking from graphic to performance, and whether your performance is instrumental or vocal or dramatic, you also take math and science classes.
Wait, would art be
Is
considered?
there real,
I'm taking that.
hold on a second, sure. Is there real,
Algebra.
understanding that some things are certainly easier for some people. Some things require less work for some people. We get that. But isn't there a tremendous amount of work in both? Is there really any less work? And again, for you, it might be harder to do one thing, so you put in more. I get that. But is there really more work and effort involved in solving an equation, performing an experiment, versus creating a painting, performing a solo? is there really less work involved?
No.
I don't know that there is. Certainly Cicero suggesting that there's no less glory in civilian things than there is in military. So if somehow deep down we know stuff like this, then why are we buying into it? Why are we buying into it? You're society, I'm society, so I gotta say we. We can't talk about society out there, we're society.
School system.
You are the school system, I'm the school, your parents, we're all the school system. You can't ever point out there because it's us. So why are we buying into what Emily said, this notion somehow that math and science is somehow more important than the arts?
Because America.
True.
I don't think it's very that either it's harder or more important, it's whether or not you're dedicated to which one more, or how much effort you're
Okay. What about people who are really more dedicated to the arts? Do you ever feel somehow lesser or embarrassed by that fact compared with those who are? You do? Yeah. Yeah. Now, I want to drill down on this a little bit more. Somebody help Emily out. She shouldn't have to bear this whole bit of the conversation. Where did you get that notion? And you're not alone in it. Most of you got it. Where does that notion come from? Really, you hear it from peers?
like comparing
Peers, parents, or professors? You know, where's the source? The source?
A lot of it comes from the standardized tests, because that
Okay.
focuses on English usually. I mean, we don't have tests in the arts.
No.
And
Unless it's
when you
like
think
classes.
about like getting into college and everything, they're gonna look at your like,
Okay.
depending on major, I guess, they're gonna look at math, science, English.
And that drives so much stuff. Jacob, I hadn't heard from you today.
Job security, because when you're older, it's a lot harder to keep like a very like steady income, and that's like seeing that if you're independent and you seem like an able-bodied person.
Well, now I gotta come back to Janae, because Janae made a comment, it's all about that money. If it is, then Jacob, you're right.
Well,
If it's all about the money, about the job, then yeah.